What's up, everybody? How's everybody doing today on this Monday? So people talking about the maw. I am rocking the Jungleberry today. I got 2 scoops in my big 45. I think it's a 45. I don't know. It's a big ass shaker cup. I should just get a shirt that says I run on caffeine and nicotine, because that's basically what it is when you don't get much sleep. You see my my workstation is a little bit messier today. We also have something new for the late night streams. I'll show you guys what that looks like. I have not integrated control of them to the what's the word I'm looking for? To the chat like we have with the cube. But we've got RGB action up in here, so I can actually, from Home Assistant here, I can actually change my lights. Look at that. We can change the lighting here. I can even change the brightness. I'm messing with the one right behind my head right now. But eventually, when we do late night streams, this looks really cool when the sun's not ruining my shot here. So, but we'll go back to normal mode there, which turns off all my LEDs. Oh no, it turned off the cube. That's okay. We'll go ahead and turn it back on. But anyways, yeah, eventually you guys will be able to type a color in chat, like a command, and you'll be able to change all the 2 standing lights behind me. These 2, I never know where to point because the image is not mirrored on my screen when I'm looking at it. But the rep box LEDs and then my printer shelf LEDs. So I'll eventually get around to do that. It's just something that I haven't had time to set up with everything else going. So the pup's Remo is in his crate. There's too much crap on the floor behind me. There's like wires and stuff. I don't want him eating any of that, so he's not in here. And I tried getting Claire to come out with me, and she just was laying on her bed in Samantha's office and looked at me like, nah, I'm not going. I'm just going to stay here and sleep. So, but welcome to the stream today. We do these every Monday and Wednesday at 2 p.m. Central. We were a little late start today because we had a new guy start today. We welcomed Sean onto our team today, and he is one of our new level 2 shop technicians. So we have that position filled. We have one more open position here. If you guys are in the area, we're located here in Hobart, Indiana, and we have an additive manufacturing technician position open. It always sounds funny when I say it, technician position. But that's more of like a print farm manager type person that runs all the jobs, maintains the printers, builds machines, and will eventually be able to do custom builds on printers for people. So, yeah, let's get into the chat. You guys have to ask me questions, and I will attempt to answer them. That's what this is about, and it could be about anything FDM related. If you guys have some questions about like home automation stuff, I also am into that, and we are starting to branch out into the home automation realm. I got some bulbs in, and the first batch was 220 volt, and the second batch is 110. So that's what's in these back here, and I'm using them in my office here and testing them. But these will be our next smart home automation product. I have 7-watt ones and also 15-watt ones, and these are actually 7-watt ones in there. And not only are these RGB, but they're also warm white and cool white. So they have not only the RGB red, green, blue LEDs inside, but they also have dedicated cool white and warm white LEDs. So that'll be the next thing. The next thing I'm going to be having us venture into in terms of automation spaces, and then trying to also figure out, like, let's say your printer encounters an error, have Octoprint be able to send a command to it to like flash your bulbs to kind of get your attention. So, yeah, but I'm big into the home automation stuff, and I've been finding it harder and harder to find devices that are not tied to like the Tuya Smart Life Cloud thing. I'm not a big fan of putting, especially Chinese-made products that have Chinese-made software. They're on my private home network. It's just a security risk, in my opinion. Maybe nothing will ever come of it, but I'd rather be running devices on my network that I have the code for and I can qualify and know what it's doing And these not only are running open source firmware just like our easy plugs, but they have source code that you can qualify, and they don't connect out to the internet. So, you know, you're not going to be able to natively use them just like our easy plugs with, you know, like Google Home Assistant or Google Assistant, like your Google Home hubs and that stuff, or your Alexa devices. But if you tie them to a platform like Home Assistant, you can have Home Assistant talk to those and be able to control those just like you would. And then it's all under your control. It's under your roof, running software that you have the source code for. That's how I like to do things here. I've got a lot of Z-Wave devices here too. I also have a lot of devices running Tasmota and ESP Home. So, and I use the 3D printers a lot when I'm building my own smart home devices to make housings and casings and mounts for different things. And that's originally why I got into 3D printing, was being able to manufacture my own enclosures and parts when I'm working on electronics projects. So let's see here. Let's see what the chat is going on. David FL, wow, our formula is so energy packed. 1 jar is equal to 75 cans of Red Bull. Yeah, don't go crazy with it. I put 2 scoops in this giant thing. If you guys are dealing with the Maw Energy, it's pretty potent stuff. I like it. I also like not having a million cans of energy drinks, and it also costs less than energy drinks. So I'm sold. That's why I started repping it here. I don't know if I told you guys, like, I joked about, I was joking about being an affiliate with them, and I saw they had an affiliate program, and I applied, and they approved it, and they said that we're actually one of their best affiliates. So I wish they would send me stuff for free, but whatever, I'll keep buying it. I drink the Kool-Aid, quite literally in this point, like, if you want to call it Kool-Aid. Yeah, BlazeMe3D and RC, that's Tor, who's one of our support guys. He's the one who told me about them. So let's see here. I'm looking for questions here. You guys are pretty sparse. Oh, and of course, as per usual, the first question is from Derek. Derek's question is, when upgrading my heated bed with a silicone pad, do I need to sandwich the pad with aluminum plates? Also, it's safe to cut or drill holes in it. I would say no to both of those. So the reason you don't need to sandwich it between aluminum pads. I would insulate the bottom of it after you put it on. I'm a big fan of using high temp pipe wrap. It's like foam. It's like adhesive, foam, and then like aluminum foil backing. It's cheap. It's readily available at most hardware stores. Just when you get it, there are some that are low temp that will only be good up to like 60, 70 degrees Celsius. But there are a lot out there that are good up to like 150 or even 200 C. So look at the packaging when you buy it. And just keep them away from your exposed wires or solder points on the bed. What I'll usually do is I'll take a piece of Kapton tape or electrical tape and put it over the points where the wires go into the bed where they're soldered, and then put insulation over that. But you don't want to put the insulation right over the bare contacts because you could risk shorting things out. But if you're smart about it and use common sense, I've never had an issue with it. In terms of cutting or drilling holes in the silicone pad, I would say no, because you don't know where the heating element is. One thing you could do if you have a thermal camera is heat the pad up and look at it through the thermal camera, and you can see then where the wire traces are, but even then you could still hit a connecting wire. I would not recommend drilling through a silicone pad unless you absolutely know what you're doing, and have the have the proper equipment. Like I have a thermal camera, so I could actually look at a silicone pad and see exactly where the heating element is when I'm telling it to heat, because they'll show up as brighter spots on the pad. So, but I wouldn't recommend doing that unless you absolutely know what you're doing. Obviously, then you'll void that pad's warranty because you're modifying it. So, let's see here. Shannon M5 says, "Hey Tim, what are your thoughts on converting the Ender 3 Pro from bowden to the direct drive? What's your print farm use? Thoughts on linear advance from Marlin for either bowden or direct drive?" So, direct drive is more of a preference thing, I think, at this point. A lot of the Bowden systems, or Bowden, whatever you want to call it, if your slicer profile set up well, and especially if you change the tubing out, like we change our tubing out from that milky white PTFE, just that basic stuff that comes with the printers, that'll usually run about 4 millimeters on the external diameter up to 4.1. is what we've seen. And then the internal diameter can be anywhere from 2.1 to 2.2 millimeters. So we switch it out for what's called our tough tube, which not only is high temp resistant, so you can replace your stock tubings. Like on a Creality hot end, that PTFE goes into the melt zone where the filament's actually getting melted. And if you go over 240C, the PTFE starts breaking down and even crystallizing, and then it'll clog your nozzle up and the tubing degrades, which you don't want. Now, the tough tube, you can use up to 275C continual use, and it won't degrade, it won't break down. But what I use a tough tubing on every single machine, even if I have a all metal hot end, is the tolerances on that are a lot better. You have a 4 millimeter external diameter, but the internal diameter is 1.9 millimeters, meaning there's less slop inside that tube when you do a retract or extrude, which means you get more accurate retractions and extrusions, because instead of the printer pushing the filament through and it's got to take up that slack between the walls of the tube and the filament, it's going to do it much quicker. And the tolerances on our tubing per the manufacturer are 0.05 millimeters plus or minus. So that means at most it's 1.95, at least it's 1.85. So it's way, way tighter tolerances, so you can get more accuracy with it. I have both direct drive machines and Bowden systems here. Most of my machines are Bowden systems. The main reason people will go to a direct drive setup is one, because someone on Facebook told them to, which is a dumb reason to. But the practical method for it, and a good reason to do it, is that you're printing a flexible material like a TPU, Ninja Flex, that kind of stuff, where you can benefit from having the shorter distance between where your extruder motor is pushing the filament and where it's getting melted. So a lot of the guys that are into drones and stuff, because they print a lot of parts in TPU and other flexible materials, they like that because you can go a little bit faster than a Bowden system. Now, you can absolutely print flexible materials on a Bowden system if you have an extruder that's equipped for it, like our tough extruder, where that filament path is fully guided, and then combine that with the tighter tolerance tubing. I print flexible on an i3 Mini, a Wanhao i3 Mini. That printer's been on this channel a couple times. I added a heated bed to it, and I actually use that one all the time for my drone parts because it's a smaller printer, but I'm able to use the build volume for 99% of what I print for my drones. You can do it, but usually on Bowden, you have to slow down the speed. So maybe you'll get, 20 millimeters a second or even 30 on a Bowden system with the tubing and a correct extruder. Whereas a direct drive, you can probably push close to 40, 50, or 60 millimeters a second because it's a much shorter path. There's less chances for that flexible filament to bunch up. So the short answer is, if you're not doing anything flexible, like this is my opinion, if you're not doing anything flexible that really benefits from doing the direct drive and doing a faster printing with the more flexible materials, if you want to mod your printer just for the sake of modding it, go for it. I totally get it. But unless you have a specific need for it that the Bowden system isn't doing what you want it to do, I don't see the point of upgrading to it. So, but if you are someone that, is into drones, or you're printing stuff with TPU or flexible materials, then a direct drive would probably be a good upgrade for you. So, as for Linear Advance, I've played with Linear Advance multiple times. I know there are people that use it. In my experience, and again, everything I say on these videos, this is just my opinion. Everybody has their own preferences and different things for how they do stuff. This is just my opinion. You can take it or leave it. It doesn't matter. I'm just sharing my knowledge that I have with YouTube. So, but in terms of Linear Advance, I found that Linear Advance just is more of a hassle than helping. A lot of your slicers too will do pressure control, not in the same way that Linear Advance does, but they are smart enough to anticipate how material is going to behave when you're changing direction. So while you may be able to get a slightly better print quality with Linear Advance on or off, a properly tuned slicing profile and a properly tuned machine is not really going to benefit that much from Linear Advance. Linear Advance is really beneficial if you have a very sloppy filament path, meaning you have a lot of slack in your tubing. You're using a really crappy, stock PTFE that comes with the printers. Then it could actually give you a benefit because it's going to try to compensate for that slack in the tubing. I prefer to just upgrade the machine, tune my slicer profile, and end up not needing it. When I have messed with Linear Advance, go out through the calibration process where you do the priming line, or the lines where it speeds up and slows down. You pick the best line, and that gives you your Linear Advance value, your K factor. I don't see a difference. Like I had side by side, you know, printed a bunch of benchies. I had them labeled on the bottoms, which one had linear advance on it, and the other ones were blank that didn't. And you couldn't tell the difference with it, to be completely honest. And that's because it was on a well-tuned machine with a well-tuned slicer profile. So one thing to note too is that linear advance cannot be run on every single printer. A lot of these machines, especially like the Ender 3 V2, for example, or the CR10 V2 or the CR10 V3, these printers that come with boards that have Trinamics, but they're running what's called standalone mode, meaning you can't adjust their current, you can't adjust their stepping mode with the printer firmware. You cannot run linear advance on, especially the TMC 2208s, because the drivers just panic and shut down. There's actually a compatibility issue with the 2208s, where if you aren't able to have the firmware control it and do what's called square wave stepping, in combination with switching it over to spread cycle helps a lot. You can run it in Stealth Chop. I don't recommend ever running your extruder in Stealth Chop. But either way, when you have control over the drivers, like on our Easy board or like on the SKR E3 boards, where they have control over the drivers, you can run linear advance successfully with 2208s or 2209s. But when you run them in standalone mode, they tend to panic and shut down and they don't work. So just keep that in mind. Now, if you have a board with 4988 drivers, like what comes in the Ender 3, Ender 3, Ender 3 Pro, Ender 5 Pro, where you have those noisier drivers, those work fine with linear advance. So there are trade-offs. So if you're trying to run linear advance and you're wondering why your extruder motor just stops extruding filament, and you have Trinamics on there, and it's a board that doesn't have the proper settings and or it doesn't have control over the drivers in terms of communication between the drivers and the processor at a firmware level, that's why. You're not going to be able to do it. So, but in my opinion, it wasn't worth the hassle. I've revisited it multiple times over the years. It's a neat feature in theory, but in practice, I don't find that it's actually worth it's worth the hassle of tuning, because you even want to, when you change filaments, you always want to redo your K factor, just because some filaments behave differently. So having to run a calibration K factor thing for every single different roll of filament, it's not worth it for me. So Chris Knight's asking, now I purchased a tough element hot iron for Ender 3 Pro, easy board, tough extruder, tough titanium heat break. Man, you had money burning a hole in your pocket. Having a ton of stringing issues, what retraction settings do you recommend? So the next question would be, what nozzle are you using? Are you using the brass nozzle or the steel nozzle? Because steel nozzles in general will string more than brass nozzles. And I'll wait for your reply in the chat. Hopefully you're still here. But in terms of retraction settings, I'm assuming you're probably running a Bowden setup. If you're not, also let me know. But in terms of retraction, I usually run about a 4 to 5 millimeter retract on all my Bowden systems, aside from ones that have a really short Bowden tube. So spending that stimmy. I didn't get a stimmy because our business income passes through to our personal taxes. So yay, we get screwed. But anyways, I won't rant about that today. We're already past the rant segment. But anyways, I usually use about 45 millimeter retract. Now, like I said, I haven't seen his reply, but in general, because like that, our hot end package comes with brass nozzles, like you guys are used to, but it also comes with steel nozzles. Now, steel nozzles are great if you're looking for a cheap nozzle that can stand up to abrasive filaments like glow in the dark and carbon fiber fill, that kind of stuff. But in my experience, the steel nozzle, and he replied, yes. So steel nozzles, I have noticed you're more prone to get stringing with them. Now, one thing I would recommend, I don't know if you've tried this already, try using a filament oiler, because it's kind of the same thing with the heat breaks, especially when you're dealing with like PLA, is that the filament wants to stick to it, whereas brass is a little bit easier. It's a little bit less sticky, so to speak, with the filament. I would definitely try adding the filament oiler, because it's going to lubricate your heat break and the nozzle. You can also just up your print temp, and also try a different roll of filament too. Sometimes I've had rolls of filament where no matter what settings I do, no matter what tricks I do or changes I do, it just never stops stringing. And then I'll open a new roll from a completely different brand, pop it in the printer, and it prints fine. But I have noticed that the steel nozzles do tend to string a little bit more. You can try to up your print temp by about 10C, and that should hopefully make the plastic a little more viscous, so that when you do a move, to move the head to another part, it's less likely to string because it's more molten instead of just kind of molten. Because you got to remember, steel doesn't conduct heat as well as brass. But like I said, steels are a very good nozzle because they're inexpensive and they stand up to abrasives. So there's trade-offs to everyone. That's another reason why we have what we call our easy flow nozzles, which are those copper nozzles with the nickel type plating on there, because they stand up to abrasives and they don't have the heat transfer reduction that steel has. So you have basically brass is like your standard, but it doesn't hold up to abrasives. Steel conducts heat worse than brass, but it stands up to abrasives, so you might have to run a higher print temp. But then you got the copper plated ones, which also stand up to abrasives, but they're also more conductive than copper, so you get a smoother flow rate out of them. So but I've used in terms of nozzles and steel nozzles, I found that bumping my print temp up a little bit and increasing the speed for my my movements when it's moving from point to point between retracts usually eliminates all those issues too. I also found that treating it with like the oil helps make the filament want to come out of the nozzle instead of kind of lingering there when it does the retract. So let's see here. James Smallwood, do you ever use arc welder on your G codes? I actually used arc welder for the first time today. People were talking about it, and I had so I dropped my douche flute out in the shop, and I cracked my drip tip, and I was like, well, I don't have another one. You can't use it without it. So the drip tip is this portion right here that you put your mouth on, and this is a circle. And I was getting a lot of stuttering. Now, this was printed on my Weihenhow i3 Mini. This is atomic translucent blue filament. It's PET G. And I was getting a lot of stuttering. I was like, you know what? I'm going to try arc welder. So I updated the firmware to our latest firmware. And that has arc support enabled. So I ran it through arc welder, and it came out great. Same exact G code. It processed it very quickly. It's neat because it takes all these little tiny moves, and instead of it being like just tiny little lines, to do a curve, it turns into an arc, so it's like just a sweeping thing, and then the printer firmware handles the radius and everything of it. So it's neat, but I know some people have issues with it. I know Scott Latine from Marlin said that Marlin 2.0.7.2 has some bugs with arcs. I haven't used it enough, but I'm definitely going to start playing with it more now that I, set it up on a printer today. It took me about 15 minutes. I processed the G-code file, and it came out great. I was actually really impressed. But you have to be running, if you're running unified firmware, I can't remember what version it was, but if you update to the latest one, that has ARC support enabled for all boards. I do believe on the 1284p boards, there's certain things where I think if you turn on like linear advance or something else, or manual mesh leveling, something that takes up a lot of memory, ARC support gets disabled because there's just not enough space on the board. But it is documented in the firmware. I just, there's so much stuff to remember, and I can only keep so much in my head here. So, but yeah, arc welder is a neat thing. My brother Doug, who goes by Top at Waffle here, I don't know if he's in the chat. He usually pops in on the streams if he's not busy. He uses arc welder a lot, and he loves it. So, give it a shot. But we don't officially support that. Arc welder is a plugin for Octoprint that optimizes your G code to take advantage of the arc settings. So, let's see here. Next one is David FL. Do those bulbs run Tasmota? Yes, they do. They run Tasmota. I'm a big fan of Tasmota for stuff like bulbs and plugs. Stuff that's like a single kind of use thing. Like Tasmota can do more than that, but my personal preference is if I got a simpler device like a bulb or a plug or a switch, I usually run Tasmota on. If I'm doing something more complicated or I'm doing something that's more DIY, I usually use ESP Home for the firmware. But yeah. So I want to test these and I've been using these, having them come on at night, just so I can run through the paces, make sure they're going to last and stuff. So, superconductor, unfortunately I have not, the new week just started today. I have to clean up, and then the Ender 6 will be going, this guy will be going up on here so I can start playing with it this week. Blank says, I'm going to upgrade the Chingling PSU on my Ender 6. Should I get the Meanwheel 350 or the 450? The 350 is fine. That it should be a direct replacement. Looking at the bolt holes and everything and the size of the PSU in there, I would say that the 350 watt 24 volt Meanwheel that we carry will be a direct replacement. I am going to replace ours once I start messing with that machine. There's just only so much time in the day, and we're finally got new staff members in, so I'm also in the process of getting everybody up to speed on our production and processes here. So I just need to figure out how to clone myself so I can be in 2 places at once. But until then, I have to prioritize stuff, and unfortunately, when the business side of things are busy here, the thing that gets shelved is any sort of development, which just how it is. Let's see. Armil said he posted in the live streams about something he asked on Discord. Let me go to live streams here. Armil says he said, mind looking at printer firmware and helping with that. Let's see. What is Armil's asking in printer firmware? He's saying he's got an error for the filament sensor on MKS S-Gen L. What firmware are you using? Marlin, or are you using our firmware? I can't tell. But you need to define a pin. It's saying right there in the error, if you look, it says error filament runout sensor requires filament runout pin. So you need to define what pin. You need to find what pin the filament sensor is connected. I usually use like X plus for my first extruder. If I'm doing 2 extruders, I use Y plus for the second sensor. But the MKS SGNL should have a I should have had one put in there. Let me check my config here, because I know we have the DIY firmware for that, which I use that on my AM8 now. Filament sensor. Did I not define one? Maybe I didn't define one, or maybe there was a... I just assumed it had one already. Hang on. Let me double check this. Let's do some source code troubleshooting. I'm staring at my screen right now. If you guys are wondering why I'm just just staring off into the distance here. MKS SGNL V2. Fill runout pin. Yeah, I do have one set for... oh, it's only for the easy out. Okay, so the easy out V2, I don't know what sensor you're trying to use, but I do have one set for the easy out. Do I have, I think I might have left the Creality one in there, because I copied this from the easy board config. Yeah, I did. So I'll have to do that. If you try, yeah, it's a Creality one. I'll have to push, I'll just make it a... I'll have to make it so you can invert the logic for that. But yeah, you can go on, so on the configuration H, let's move this over here, and I'll show you what's going on here. Let's switch over. So in the configuration H file, if we look here, we've got the 2 filament sensor options. Like, this is copied from the easy board DIY. So if I go here, I do have this defaulting here. So basically, if our Easy Out V2 uses the low state, the Creality one uses the high. So you can see here if either of these are defined, except what I forgot to do here was this should read, this is in Marlin source pins LPC 1769 pins MKS SGNL V2. And you can see here I have it defining this. What I should have had this done instead of Easy Out V2 enable, I should have just had this right here. So if this is enabled, then we're going to define that on the X max pin. Now, to get around it with the current firmware, if you just put this line here into just anywhere in the configuration.h, then it will compile correctly. So you can see here we're using the X plus pin, which is P1_28. But I'll go ahead and get this patched. So if I pull up GitHub here, there we go. That'll do it. So basically, we're going to say if the filament runout sensor feature is enabled, we're going to go ahead and do that instead of just the Easy Out V2. So I'll go ahead and push that up. This is going up to the testing branch. So if you want to download the testing branch, that'll be on there right now. So yeah, I tested it with the Easy Out V2 sensor because that's what I'm using, but forgot to account for the Creality sensor. So let's see the other, let's see the other chat questions here. Victor Rivera says, does your firmware work on a VoxLab Agulia? Never heard of that. I'm going to Google that printer, though. Let's see what that is. Oh, all these Chinese printers. Oh, that's probably gonna be one that's gonna be a pain in the ass to get supported if we did buy one. Because I see a touchscreen. I don't know what touchscreen they're using, but the layout of it doesn't look like anything I am familiar with. Let's see here. Oh no, let's not move that. I just grabbed my... I thought I locked that stuff. Hang on, let me lock this stuff so I don't accidentally move it. I tried to grab the top of the window here. Yeah, I've never heard of this one. That's clearly photoshopped. But yeah, I see a touchscreen here, so... Yeah, I definitely don't have it supported in the firmware. It looks like an Ender 3 and something else had a baby. So... It's interesting. Yeah, see, I'm not sure what screen they're using here. This layout doesn't look like anything I've seen before, so I can't... Usually you can tell if it's like, oh, if it's a big tree tack, it looks a certain way. If it's MKS, it looks a certain way. In that case, I have no idea what they're using. I have to get my hands on the actual machine. Let's see here. Redline is asking, I want to start printing functional parts. ABS or PETG? Mainly stuff that might be close to heat, like extruder parts like that. In general, PETG works fine for extruder parts. PETG has a glass transition temperature of around 80 degrees Celsius, which is where it starts getting soft. Whereas ABS, people like ABS because it's got a glass transition temp of, I believe it's either 100 or 105 C, so it's a lot higher. It's basically boiling point of water. So, but PETG for extruder parts will be fine. ABS, you need an enclosure. PETG, you can get away with not having an enclosure. Nemo Griff, what Core XLI printer do you like that's less than 2,000? We'll see after I put up the Ender 6. The Ender 6 will be the third or fourth Core XY I've messed with. I've been loving our Daedalus here. If you guys got the money, I'll give a shout out to Project R3D. I've been very happy with that. That's now the printer I'm using for most of my prototyping work. I still use my Ender 3 Pro, but I put a 0.6 nozzle. I put our EasyFlow 0.6 and the E3D V6 that's on there, and allows me to get prints done very fast. I used it yesterday, actually. And I used my Ender 3 to print some other brackets. So those are my two go-to machines. But we'll see how the Ender 6 is. I have high hopes for the Ender 6. I just haven't had... Oh, no! I was trying to out-talk the yawning, but it caught up with me. I hope the Ender 6 ends up being good once I put some time on it. So, but just haven't had time. Like I said, certain things get shelved, and it's usually me messing with new machines that get shelved when things are, behind here, so I can keep everything moving. Paul Robertson is asking, are we going to follow video on the Ender 6? Yeah, we'll do some videos doing the upgrades on it and working on it. So hopefully this week, unless something, catches on fire and completely dies here, I will be working on the Ender 6 this week. Jason M., any good news on the EasyBoard availability? Yes, we do have good news. We were able to get our hands on a couple hundred of the LPC 1769s. The downside is it's going to cost us about $10 more per board to get them manufactured, but we are getting them manufactured since we were able to locate some genuine LPC 1769 chips. The only difference is the price will be $10 more just because our costs increased by actually more than $10, but we're only bumping it up by 10. So we should have more easy boards in a couple of weeks. And then after that, if the silicon shortage doesn't let up, I don't know when we'll have more. So I saw someone in the, I think it was one of the guys on Discord. I think it was Apulo. Yeah, he told me that I guess Big Tree Tech discontinued a lot of their boards that use those processors because they can't get them anymore. And those boards would be like the SKR 1.3, 1.4, and 1.4 turbos. I haven't seen anything from MKS that they're discontinuing them, and we do have an order of MKS S-Gen Ls that V2s that did ship to us, and those use the 1769. So basically everybody that's using processors, prices are going up considerably, or you just can't find them. Yeah. let's see here. Glenn Rudolph, should I get the BL Touch or TH3's auto level? And what firmware for Ender 3 V2? And why does my printer require reboot to read the SD files? So obviously we sell the Easy ABL. I do think it's a superior product to the BL Touch, mainly because it's easier to connect. There's no risk of shorting your board out. I can't tell you how many people I've seen where they buy a BL Touch kit and they literally fry their board. I'm not exaggerating. They literally fry their board because they don't check the wiring, and the wiring that comes on the kits, especially even the Creality ones, are wrong, and they short out the 5-volt rail and they end up killing their board and the sensor. That's not a risk at all with the Easy ABL. It connects just to your ZN stop. You're not actually pulling power from the printer board. You also get technical support. So if you need help using the kit or installing it or troubleshooting, you can actually contact us. We're the people who make it and designed it, and get support. BL Touch, you're on your own. There's no technical support. By the time you get the extension cables and whatever, like usually you need to buy an extension cable for the BL Touch. They usually like come with like a little wire, unless you get like a pre-built kit. You're within a couple dollars of the Easy ABL. The thing I like about the Easy ABL from a, just comparing the probe standpoint is the Easy ABL, there's no moving parts. It's a lot more resilient to getting hit, to having prints fail and catch it. I can't tell you how many times I've seen BL Touches get engulfed by a failed print where the filament comes up on the nozzle and it melts the probe, or it kills the pin, or the pin fails to deploy successfully, and then the nozzle goes into the bed and it bends the pin, and then you have to buy a new pin. The Easy ABLs are very resilient. They're much more durable. We also have fully shielded cabling from the sensor all the way back to the control board, meaning you're not going to pick up interference from your heater lines or your motor lines or your fan lines or other power wires, because the wire's shielded. We use a dual layer foil and braided shielded cable on ours. BL Touch just uses really cheap, thin wires, and they are very prone to pick up interference. And then on the control board side, we have a little board that drives our sensor that's mounted remotely. We also filter the power going into it. So even if you have a cheaper power supply, we have extra filtering on that board that makes sure our sensor gets a nice clean signal. Whereas the BL Touch, especially on like the big Tree Tech boards where their 5-volt rail is very unstable and that's what your sensor runs off of, you can get inaccurate readings because the power going to the sensors like this. Whereas with ours, even if we have a really crappy power supply powering the sensor, the circuitry smooths it out, so our sensor gets really clean power. But let's see. And why does your printer require reboot to read the SD card files? So as far as I know, the 422 boards don't have a detect pin that's like working, meaning when you put it in, the slots actually have a little thing that closes the contact. And normally on a normal LCD, the Ender 3 V2 doesn't have a normal LCD. There's an option to attach the SD card. And it says if you put an SD card in, you go to the menu, you can hit attach SD, and it'll mount the card. As far as I know, the Ender 3 V2 LCD does not have that option. So when the firmware starts up, if it checks if there's a card present, if it detects one on boot, then it will mount the card. One of the things you should do, and I'm sure there's people in chat that have done this to their printer, it's like a $20 upgrade, and you get rid of the color touchscreen, or not the touchscreen, but the color screen, and go to a 12864 LCD, and we have a article, which I'll link in chat, and you can use this with the stock board and a firmware update, and you get more features with this LCD, even though it's not a color fancy looking screen. You get way more features from the firmware than with the Ender 3 V2 screen. Now, I know there are people working on trying to hack the Ender 3 V2 LCD to get it to do more stuff, but I tested it out and the firmware is very clunky. It's definitely not what I would call production ready, whereas this would be production ready. This is a $17.99 screen. We carry the screen too, and there's even a video on that page I linked showing where I did it on a live video here to mine, and it took me about 10 minutes to disconnect the old one, mount the new one. There's a printed part that you bolt to the printer and you update the firmware. That's it. I was trying to see if anybody in chat chimed in if they converted theirs. So yeah, but here's the thing. Eventually, I think Marlin is going to be able to do more with that Ender 3 V2 screen, but the problem is, when is that going to happen? Because it's running, that screen itself has its own firmware that's separate from the printer's firmware. And while I know there's a way, or there's the framework, it's not all documented, but there is a framework to draw different menus and draw boxes and images on the screen. That has to be implemented in Marlin. So you could keep that screen and wait around and suffer with it. And eventually maybe Marlin will roll out an update that'll add more features to that screen. But what I did with our Ender 3 V2 is I just put the older style screen on the same one that came with the Ender 3 regular version, which is what the article I linked talks about doing, and just moved on with my life. Because I don't care if it has a color screen or, a text-only screen like the older ones. What I care about is how does it function? What options do I have? And the reality is right now where this current state of Marlin is with these boards, the older style screen or the, crappier screen, I'm using air quotes because I don't think it's actually crappier, but a lot of people do just because it's not color, offers you more function. And it's as simple as that. So, let's see here. I am going to wrap this up a little after 3 o'clock because I do have a ton of stuff to get done today. I got a lot of paperwork to fill out for the new employee. So, I have to get that done today. And I also have to clean up my office. There will be a random late night stream at some point this week. I got to plan out when, but I have easy boards that I have to get done by Wednesday. So I was thinking about popping another stream on and just hang out with you guys and chat while I'm fixing some boards that people blew holes in the CPUs. We got quite a few where people shorted out their hot ends and blew the processors out. Let's see here. Let me get back to chat. I got off topic here. Okay, there we go. Chris Travis, are you going to attend Murph this year? If they have it, yes, we will. We did not get a refund from them. We opted to not get a refund and hold our sponsor position that we paid for in was it 2019 when the malware hit, or was it 2020? I have no idea. It's all a blur. But either way, we kept our sponsor spot, and I'm glad we did because they're not opening up anyone anymore. So if they're having it, yeah, we're going to be there. Absolutely. Maybe if we, once they have the date, maybe I'll order a bunch of the TH3D neck gaiters and we can sell those at the booth. Can rock our brand. Let's see here. Next question. Joe Donnie said, how do I add in your firmware define temp sensor 0, 1, and heater min temp 5 in configuration.x H for a screw in thermistor? So 1, temp sensor 0, number 1 is default. So if you don't change anything, that's what it's going to default to. So you don't have to change anything there. But we will go over the config file real quick. So let me just pull one up because with our firmware, we have everything kind of unified. Consistent between the board configs. So whether we're talking about a Creality board or a TH3D board or an Anycubic board, I try to make everything the same. So if you guys do have a thermistor setting that needs to be changed, if you scroll down into the configuration.h file, you see this thermistor settings section, and we have some predefined options. So this one sets thermistor value number 5. This one sets thermistor value number 1 because that's what our thermistors we sell in our shop use. Or if you want to just tell it what number you're using, you can uncomment this line and then put your number in here. So let's say you're using a 1 or maybe you're using 11. And it'll take that number and then apply it to the firmware setting. Now for the min temp, that's going to be in the backend file. Now I'm looking for through my GitHub stuff, so it's going to look a little different than what you guys are used to seeing. But you can see here in the configuration backend file, our heater 0 min temp is set to 0, so you shouldn't need to change that. And then they all use the same setting. So if you change this, it changes it for all these other ones. For your bed min temp, your heater 0 min temp, 1 through 7. Also, if you guys are tired of dealing with cold extrusion prevention, if you just go in here and go boop boop, that'll disable it. I thought about disabling that in the firmware, but that can break some compiles, like with the Ender 3 V2. It will not compile if you disable cold extrusion prevention. But you could also just lower this value, so you can say like 50 or 20. And that would effectively disable it depending on your ambient room temperature. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, so that's where those settings are located. You shouldn't need to modify anything. If your screw-in thermistor type is using number 1, you should just be good to hook it up and go. So, Andrew Humphrey's asking, is it necessary to change the Z offset for every different build layer height using Cura on a Creality machine? No, you shouldn't need to change it. I always recommend, no matter if you're using our Easy ABL or you're using a BL Touch or whatever other auto bed leveling sensor you may be using, there's a few out there, always check your first layer. I run a skirt, and I'll show you what that looks like here. I run a skirt around my parts, and I do my first layer adjustment on the skirt. So let's go ahead and open up S3D here. Let me drop in a file here. We're gonna do my favorite test print, which is the Cali Cat. And you see here, so I got my model, and if I slice this up here, you can see automatically I get this little skirt around the part. And so what this is I will do my Z adjustment using baby stepping on this here before it actually gets to print. Now, every slicer is different, but like in Simplify 3D, if I go to Additions and I want more time to adjust, I can also go ahead and change the skirt outlines to 5, or if I want it further apart from the model, I can change that here. And then now if I slice this, we'll get more, and it's further away from the actual part. So you can do your adjustment on the skirt and not mess with your actual printed part. So you got some time there to do your adjustment and eyeball your first layer without actually messing with the part. And that's what I recommend people do. It just makes a lot of sense. I usually do like 2 or 3, and I'll offset it like 5 millimeters from the part. This is usually what I do, and I'll do my adjustments on here. So that way, if something is off, because your Z offset can vary, it really depends on how well your machine's physically dialed in, and you know how much play it has in all the mechanicals. But I just recommend, like our policy here for people who run the print farm, if you start a print, you got to sit there, and once it starts printing, you get your ass over there and you bring the baby stepping menu up and you check it. And then once you see that's got a good smush, then you can walk away from the printer. And we run these skirts around all of our machines. So it doesn't take up much more time to run a little skirt around there, but it does ensure that your print is properly, set up, so to speak. So, where's my live chat? I lost my live chat. Where is it? Here it is. If you guys are looking for posting like links or stuff or pictures in Discord, it has to go in the live streams channel. I'm not going to go through all the different channels we have to try to find your post, because we are coming up on time. We only do these for an hour because I do have a company run. I would love to stream more often, but I have to keep the company running here. It's one of the downsides of running a company, but I am grateful for the time that I do get. Arden Phillips says, any chance you'll be getting more silent boards for the Creality Ender series? We have more easy boards on the way. I did contact our Creality rep, and he said that the 427 boards are out of stock right now, so I can't get them. I'm trying to. I haven't. So Gaxon's asking about a different fan. I did order those fans, the 24LBs. The problem is I got heat creep with them. They are quieter than the ones we sell, but the last thing I want to do is be selling fans that cause heat creep, and then people, complaining that, hey, I put your fan in my printer, and, now I'm getting issues where I'm getting heat creep because there's not enough airflow. So usually when you go with a quieter fan, it spins slower, which moves less air. I'd rather on the air or the side of the fan being a little louder and not causing issues with the people's printers that they're putting them on. So, Samster, did you test the MCAS E3P board? I can't remember if I have the E3P or the E3D one. I have whatever one comes with the 512K chip and its socketed drivers, but I have not. They're still sitting there. But we're getting to a point now that we have a new guy for operations manager here, and we just hired another level 2 technician today. We should be getting things back into shape, and I should be able to focus on more development stuff in the next week or two here. So shout out to the new guys that are on board in here. We're going to go ahead and I'm going to answer like 1 or 2 more questions, and then we're going to call it a day here. I'm going to plug the giveaway too. I don't like advertising in the stream like videos and descriptions that we're doing a giveaway because I want people to enter who actually have interest in watching the channel. Kind of as a little thank you. So every single month we give away a 3D printer. So we take entries only during the streams, and that's all you can enter is when you're actually watching the streams. So I just posted a link in chat to enter the giveaway. It's just simple. You fill out the form, and we usually have a question. So we are collecting some like information to get feedback from people. This week is we're just asking like, how'd you hear from us, and what upgrades have you done to your printer? And I just like that information. It gives me an idea of what kind of stuff we should carry and what kind of stuff we can do with the company. So, you know, and we give away a printer every month. We gave away an Ender 3 V2 in January. We gave away an Ender 3 Max last month. And this month is going to be a surprise. So it's going to be a printer, but I'm not telling you what. Tomio is asking, how do I need to update the firmware to use an EasyABL and Sunloop SA? Yes, every single printer that we support, you have to update the firmware on to use an EasyABL because there's settings that are required to drive and run the sensor. So yes. Blank is saying, I'm using extensible UI on my V2. Yeah, I know there's a lot of new stuff in the new bug fix Marlin. I just haven't had time to play with it. I am going to start pulling the bug fix code over to our branch and getting our stuff ported over to the new bug fix so we can kind of be ready to go when the next Marlin releases. So, but yeah, let's just see. Are there any other quick questions here? Glenn Rudolph, USB cam versus RPI cam used with Octoprint. I 100% USB camera, 100%. The RPI cam is a pain in the ass because it uses that ribbon cable. I've had too many failures with the ribbon cable, and they're just a pain to extend and route. A USB camera is easy to extend. You just get a USB extension cable and call it a day. Yeah, really, really, really simple here. I have one printer left with a Raspberry Pi camera, and it's one I built 3 years ago. So, Redline's asking, how's the TH3 toolkit coming along? Is it still in the works? I have ordered 500 of those kits. I'm just waiting for them to get here. Shipping logistics are still all sorts of fucked up with all the human malware situation. Like, they're just absolutely... Well, I already swore, so fuck it. They're absolutely fucked right now. So, yeah. I'm checking to see, because I thought my supplier gave me. I want to see if they hit the docks yet, because we had those shipped via sea, because they're heavy suckers. Let me see. Tracking. I'm going through my messages with them. Okay, screwdriver set. Yeah, they shipped in January. So think about this. It's March 22nd. These shipped out in January, and we still have not got them in. January 22nd. So it's been almost 2 months. I'm checking here, and this is a 9 package shipment, and none of them have hit the port yet. So when we ship them by sea, they come in a container, they get unloaded, and UPS takes them from the port to us here in Indiana. So yeah, I'm waiting on a new set, because the one I have, like, it served me well. I've had this for like a year, but like this is like starting to like come off and stuff. So, and some of my bits are all rounded off. And the new ones I have, these are like some chrome-plated ones. The new ones that we have are all H2 tool steel. So, they should stand up to a lot more abuse. But I use my stuff a lot. So, I definitely probably use stuff more than the average person would. Hang on, I got one of my staff pinging me. Okay. Just reply to them. But that'll wrap it up here. I'm just seeing here. R Mills, when are you going to start selling bulk tough tube? You can order as many meters as you want. And let's say, like with our tubing, if you order, one quantity is 1 meter. So let's say you order 10 meters, you're going to get one continuous piece of tubing. We don't actually ship out, like 1 meter cuts. If you order 10 of the tough tube, 10 quantity, you'll get 10 meters. If you order 5, you get 5 meters, and it's going to be all one continuous piece. So, let's see. Yeah, I think that's good. That works out. That works out well. So I appreciate you guys. I just CP last month Ender 5 dual Z kit. That's on my to-do list for end of this week. My next thing is Ender 6. I need to get that going. But I still have the dual Z kits are sitting in that box right there. for the Ender 5. I've got 5. I got 5 of them there, so I got to put them on the machine, see if there's any other adjustments I got to make to the design or not. But I have to get my ass back to work. As much as I'd like to sit here and talk to you guys, I could seriously sit here and talk to you guys for hours about shit, but I have to make sure the company's running. So, anyways, I love you guys. I appreciate you stopping by. I appreciate you guys supporting us. Make sure to hit the giveaway. You can go to giveaway.th3dstudio.com. I will go ahead and leave the form open for a couple minutes after the stream ends. And if you guys want to support us, you can either use affiliate links for different places in the description below. We've got Maw Affiliate, which is the energy drink mix that I personally use. I turned my buddy Joe onto it, who's our operations manager. He's like, yeah, that stuff's good. I was like, I know. But we also have, I think, Coinbase, Amazon, and Creality. We have a couple of affiliate stuff. But anyways, I don't like asking for money directly. I'd rather you guys buy stuff that you can use. And that's about it. So I hope you guys learned something. And I'll see you guys on the next stream. And as always, happy printing.